Okay, so you have to excuse the brevity of this. I just really quick this morning cooked it up. What I want to do is talk about the KPIs that we should be looking at when we are doing sales and marketing on LinkedIn, and all the different activities that you can do. This obviously you could build this out and make it huge. I just kind of want to keep it simple. So I want to talk about what KPIs should you measure, what KPIs matter the most, and then what KPIs should we shoot for? What numbers? And for those of you who are like, what the heck is a KPI? It's just an acronym for key performance indicator, or a measurable number, has to be measurable, that you can look at and use that number to see if you are being successful or if you are failing. So if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. All right. Let's just kind of go left to right. Feel free to chime in here, but I kind of want to hit doing paid, organic. Actually, let's just change this to organic content. Sorry, because it's different, but it's similar, and we can build it out later if we need. Direct outreach, and then LinkedIn events. So on paid ads, you've got the kind of workflow is, you pay, your ad is served, it gets an impression or view. And then once it gets the impression or view, you either, because it's a paid ad, it might get a click. The click might be to a lead form, or if it's like sponsored content or whatever, it could actually get engagement. Whatever you're paying to promote could get engagement. And then there's some kind of click, and then that goes to either, if it's paid ad, a lead form, or they're going to go to, like, I guess maybe your company page, and then your website. And then on your website, you fill out, there's some kind of lead conversion action, right? And it's usually going to be like you fill out a form, you do a phone call. This is measured inside of LinkedIn Campaign Manager. The lead conversions on your website, they're also measured in Campaign Manager, but you have to set up the goal conversions, but it's all tracked in there for you. So when you're doing paid ads, LinkedIn's going to tell you things like, this is how many impressions your ad has. This is your click-through rate. These are your lead form submissions. These are your measured website conversions. So that's kind of the workflow when you're doing paid ads. I'll kind of just start and say, if you're paying for LinkedIn ads, which are expensive, I really care the most about lead conversions, right? Especially if you're paying $50 a click. I want to see on my ad campaigns, I need to see conversions of some kind. You can have a whole nother conversation about what conversion you should shoot for, top, mid, bottom of funnel, but you need to see some kind of conversion, and then you can associate a cost per conversion. So lead forms are easy because they're baked into Campaign Manager. If you can set up goal conversions on your website and your Campaign Manager, that's easy. But these also matter too, right? Like, your ad's not going to, if there's no impressions, you're not going to get any clicks. If you don't get any clicks,
I think you would also want to add boosted content as a category.
Do you think that is it similar enough to where you do this? Just lump them together?
You probably could, because they kind of do the same thing, but I'd also add, down your lead form, your website, a follow. A lot of people will boost content for corporate page followers.
And then the conversion action is a follow.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm running out of space. No. Let's do this. So if we're talking about paid ads, I wouldn't want to pay per impression. I would rather, or bid per impression for LinkedIn ads. I would rather bid for like a click, and same thing with like Google ads. Like, if you bid per impression, you just don't know there's so many unknowns there. I'd rather bid for activity, and then that drives up your impressions. So, but you still need to look at your impressions. But for ads on LinkedIn, the click-through rate actually is super important. because the higher your click-through rate is on ads, the lower your bid it is, the less you're going to pay per click. So if you're doing paid ads and you're watching this, yes, impressions are important, but on its like typical ad, the click-through rate affects how much you spend per click because of quality score. So this is one thing that you definitely, as a campaign manager, want to be looking at. If your click-through rates are awful, they're always low on LinkedIn anyways, but if they're actually awful, then you're going to be spending more money than necessary. So I definitely look at your click-through rate, your conversion rate. Anyone else want to add anything on there? Like, I'm not a full-time LinkedIn ads guy, so if anyone has any advice on that, I would be super excited to hear it.
Is there a correlation to your company page follower count as it relates to what the impressions or audience you're going to get on ads?
On ads, only I think if you choose to, and maybe it's more, people are more familiar with Facebook, but like display something to only your company page followers, then it would matter. But beyond that, it's more by who you choose to target. What about on boosted? Monty, have you messed with boosted posts much? Because that's a newer thing. Do you know if page follower count matters on that?
No, it doesn't. It's just
Okay.
like ads. You choose the audience, you choose,
Okay.
who you want it to be seen by, and then it'll show it. Basically, it goes by your dollars. It's limited by your dollars.
Mm-hmm. So if I'm doing ads, I need to see impressions, because no impressions means your ads are never being displayed. And LinkedIn has a low click-through rate compared to other platforms anyway. So it's like you really do need a lot of impressions. But what you're really after is a high click-through rate to bring down to bring up your quality score, to bring down your cost per click. And then I'm looking at, ultimately, I want as cheap a click as possible because I want as many conversions as possible. So I'm really mostly concerned with my click-through rate, cost per click, and I'm looking at measured conversions on LinkedIn ads. That's kind of what I'm looking at.
Curious, would you put a threshold of a minimum audience size? Because I know when AJ has given his talks, he says, it should be at least, was it, I forget the number, was it 100,000, 80,000 or something like that? So would it be like, how do you determine on these, what's your minimum audience size to even make that effective? Because when you talk about getting more clicks, if you're, have a very small audience size, it may not make sense to be doing the paid ads.
I think that I don't have anything to add to what you just said that AJ said, but I would say it's kind of the same rules of thumb. If your audience size is small, you're not going to have hardly any impressions, which you're not going to have a good click-through rate. You probably have just less clicks, period. I don't know what the entry, like the minimum audience size should be. I know I've heard AJ say multiple times, if your audience size is big enough, start your bid at the floor. So like LinkedIn will tell you the minimum bid. He says always start at the floor and then just bring it up a little tiny bit. But other than that, Judy, I don't have an answer. Anybody else? No? Okay, cool. All right, moving on to organic content. Monty, you should just freewheel this one because this is your wheelhouse.
I'm sure there's a lot of people that can have some input on this. And I would love to hear everybody's input on this too, but just taking a look at what you have here. This is one area where LinkedIn will give you a lot of stats, and especially if it's on, when we're talking about corporate pages here, not personal profiles, right?
I mean, I right now just have it lumped together, but should we make it one or the other because they're different enough?
Yeah, I mean, I think they definitely have different purposes for sure. But
okay. Let's start with organic corporate. Is that cool?
Yeah. So with organic on corporate, you get to see who your people are that you're talking to. It'll give you analytics for that. So that's a key KPI for me. Who's it actually being seen by? The click-through rate, how many people are clicking see more to see that post is a KPI for me. If you have a link, you want to have all the LinkedIn code, if you would, that you can put in the header of your website. So anytime somebody's clicking your go to website button on your company page, anytime they're clicking a link to your website, whether you put it in the comments or it's in the post itself, that can be tracked to your website. So that's a KPI. How many views you're getting, I believe, is still very important on your company pages, because there's opportunity within those views, assuming you're talking to the right people. So how many views you have combined with who you're actually talking to, they will show you that. So that's a KPI for me. That's definitely important for your clients to be able to go back and show, here's the titles that you're talking to. Your website, let me see what you have here. Yeah, you've got your engagement there. Let me let me just look at one of my company pages and see the other KPIs that we track.
Do you want to share your screen so that we can put a visual?
I can, yeah.
Is that cool, everybody?
Love it.
Better be cool. Hang on one second. Let me make you co-host.
I got it. I can
Okay.
You don't let me share.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so we track unique visitors. We want to know on a monthly basis how many new people are coming to your company page. That's an important one. How many new followers is definitely something that we track. That all flows in with your corporate content that you're putting out there, your post impressions, and then most important, what your button clicks are. So your button clicks are going to be, for us, it's back to a web page. They've got four different buttons that you can use on your company page. Then you can dig into this stuff. You can get into your visitors. You can look at your top job functions. You can do this by location, by seniority, industry, and company size. Every single one of those are KPIs that we deliver back to clients. That really helps you make decisions on what kind of marketing you're going to, or what kind of posts and marketing needs to be out there. So, and then, this is just like Google. I mean, you can change the date, last 7 days back up to last 12 months or even more. So all that stuff's very important to use. Then they give you your metrics on your posts. We have not been active this past week, so we're not tracking it much, but we can go back to the last 15 days, to take a look at your impressions, what your click-through rates are. If you can get over 15-20%, I think you're doing well with company page content. Your clicks are who's going to see more. Then you can get your reactions and your comments. Those are all important KPIs to get back to a client, because that shows them what's your activity level, not only internally with their staff, but then, who's engaging it outside of your staff too, on the platform itself. So then down to your engagement rate, those are all great numbers.
Can you wait? Can you don't click the button? Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Put you on the spot. And if you don't know, this is off the cuff, that's totally cool. So for people that are watching this later, Monty, and if you're doing corporate page content, do you have any sort of numbers to shoot for? Like, let's say a company page has gotten 1,000 followers. Yeah. What should we be aiming for impressions on average per post on click-through rate, engagement rate, and I know there are a bunch of variables in there, but do you have any broad strokes advice you can give?
There's not an average. Obviously the higher the better, but a click-through rate, that's people that's clicking see more. So if typically with company page content, it is notoriously bad for engagement, but very little engagement swings that pendulum and moves that impressions so dramatically. So if you can get engagement even a little bit, it's going to help significantly. Your click-through rate, people that are clicking that see more, the more of that you can get, the more impressions you're going to receive as well. So you want to try, and that makes the hook, if you would, that you have on your post so critical. You just want to have people that'll open it. LinkedIn's also tracking hover time. So the amount of time that somebody spends on a post. So a longer form post on your company page may be a little bit better than just the one sentence. And then your engagement rate is going to affect that as well. So if you look at most company pages, usually when we start working with clients, this is just deplorable. I mean, it's really bad. So the more we can push that up, the more views you're going to get over time. And it really does compound. So LinkedIn really does award you for it. But does that answer the question? I know I'm not giving you absolutes, but there's not really any absolutes.
Can I ask a question on this one? I'm sorry, Isaac.
Yeah.
As I'm looking at this, I would say engagement rate would have been something I'd want to have high, but then you look at the one that just has 17 impressions and is usually right? So relative. But what is the key metric here? Is it the impressions or is it the clicks? I mean, what do you really want to target in on? Because if I was looking at this and I'd say, wow, it had 20,000 impressions, but only have 0.31 engagement rate, which is low, or 0.26, but yet 20,000 impressions is huge,
Yeah.
And which one of these would you say would be the key focus to point the client to look at?
So I would not point the client to look at any one post first off, right? So if I'm wanting to, when we're talking to people about their content, I want to show them over an extended period of time, and I want them to see consistency, a consistent growth pattern. So you're always going to have some anomaly that doesn't make sense. Like, why do I have 5.8% engagement rate here and I only have 17 impressions? Well, I had no engagement here. It was only 1 and 0. So that doesn't make any sense. So you can't take one post to prove literally anything. It's just like your posts on LinkedIn. Why do you have one post that just gets 20,000 views and then the next day you only get 500, right? I mean, there's just some things that don't make sense. So what we always do is we have to make sure, that's why when we're working with clients, you got to give time to be able to create an accurate picture of what's happening with your content. So over time, if you can aggregate this engagement rate and aggregate your click-through rates and stuff like that to show this is moving up the scale, not down, that's what we're going for, right? We want to show that engagement's going up, clicks are going up. But if you do it at the post level, it's going to make no sense.
Like, let me just clarify that. Which KPI would you say would be the, is it impressions? Is it CTR?
I don't think there's one that's more important than the other, honestly. I mean, I think all of those are important. If I'm showing how many impressions I get, I also want to know what my click-through rate is. And I also want to know what level of engagement I'm getting off of that. So I would say those three are equally important.
Okay.
Let me add one thing too.
Yeah, I
Let
didn't
me
know
add one thing.
this, so this is really awesome. I'm sorry, go ahead.
So as a marketer, we have to communicate the value of every stage of the buyer's journey in your company being there. So there really is value in impressions related to things like brand awareness, right? There is also value in, as a marketer, that you need to communicate to your clients, like, hey, you're getting leads, you're getting lead form submissions, website submissions. So they're really, I think that's what Monty's saying, is there is genuine value in brand awareness. There's genuine, so that means that there's, if you're looking at engagement, that helps with brand awareness. If you're looking at impressions, that matters for brand awareness. And of course, if that doesn't turn into any kind of conversion, then it's like not as important. Sometimes you can't directly measure the conversion though, because they might just remember you from seeing your stuff and then Google search your company and then do a conversion. So there's genuine value there. I think as a content marketer, looking at your actions and where to spend your time, I'm summarizing here and saying what you should be looking at first is engagement, because engagement fuels impressions in my mind. And that's totally different than a paid ad, because if you're doing a paid ad, engagement's not going to really move the needle there. It's your click-through rate. So you're looking at on corporate organic, you're looking at engagement that ticks your impressions way up, which leads to more engagement, which leads to more click-throughs, which leads to more conversion actions. So I don't, does that help at all? That's what I'm looking at. I'd be looking at is engagement, impressions, conversions.
Now, the other thing is that you have to remember too, though, is that on corporate page content, it is difficult to get engagement because people do business with people, not with brands. So they're going to interact and engage with people's posts, personal posts, much more than they will a company brand, right? Or a company page post.
Sure.
One trick you have to do there, and one of the ways that we drive up engagement for that is you have to make content conversational. Most companies, when we're working with them, are putting what I call website content, where they'll just take their blogs and stuff like that, and they'll just repost them back onto LinkedIn, or they're congratulating an employee, or they're doing, and a lot of this stuff LinkedIn tells you to do, but it's extremely ineffective and nobody cares. So you're not going to get a lot of engagement out of that stuff. So if the more engaging you can make your content, same as your personal posts, the more likeliness you're going to get for people to start engaging that content, even though it's a corporate post. But
because and it's true. I mean, some of it is just junk, right? But I also laugh at the people who want to connect and sell me something, but who also have zero activity at all. None. Right? There's no company information. They're not tied to a company. They're trying to sell me on promotional products, and there's not a single picture of anything. There's not a conversation of who's involved with it. I'm like, put something up there.
Yeah, and they're just using LinkedIn as a lead list. Yeah, I agree. So, but what I tell people, it's what gets me hard, and we're talking about KPIs. When you're working with any company, ultimately the question is going to be, well, great, you got me, you got me 124,000 views. So what? What's that give me? Well, the so what, the so what is, if you're talking about brand influence, and the point that was just made is that if you're a person out there trying to start conversations, develop rapport, and do some business with LinkedIn, wouldn't you rather have that than nothing? And wouldn't you want to use that as opportunity? Because if you have 124,000 views, that's 124,000 people within the last 30 days that have seen something from your brand. And it takes 12 to 15 touches average before you're going to make any, as you move somebody through a sales funnel, right? So really, even before you're going to get to talk to them at all. And it's become so much harder on LinkedIn to have conversations with people because of the nonstop pitching, that anything you can do to give yourself a leg up and to create that trust, expertise, and authority within your brand that then transfers over to your personal brand, you want to do.
Can I add to that?
Go ahead.
I love what you're saying, Monty. And we are collectively an example of how LinkedIn can manifest into business, because I think it started with the premise of Isaac giving, right? So I talked to a client yesterday, and I was telling him about somebody. He says, "Oh, but I'm giving too much." And I said, no, that's what you want to do. So, the fact that, how you behave on LinkedIn, if you have, the giver mentality, the giver mindset, even as a company, you can still, there's a person behind the company. And I know it may be philosophical, but I would say, it's the consistency, it's the genuine behavior. And I think what's happening now is I see it more and more, and I've stopped even trying to correct people with the pitch. And I've even told people, no, I'm not interested. And they're still messaging me. Well, how about this? And they're sending me 72 links. And it's like, dude, stop it. And now I've even stopped even engaging with them because I just report them. But it is interesting when you show this. So it comes down to the content that you're putting. And I notice what you're posting is very thought provoking. And my only problem is sometimes I see it and I don't have time to give it thought to get some decent feedback. And I'm like, I don't want to put something stupid here because, this is whatever. But would you guys just talk a little bit about, if you have time, you did some tactics that I thought were really interesting. You did some kind of contest or something to grow your following. And how that I thought was ingenious. But, do you talk a little bit about tactics of how to grow following on a page as a company? Because I think it's
let's do this since we've got 5 minutes left.
Okay.
And that's going off of KPIs. Let's have that really good conversation topic another time.
Noted.
Is that cool? I want to make sure we get through it. Sorry.
Stringing you along for next week.
Monty, that you
Yes.
show clients. Do you have a dashboard that you incorporate this stuff in to show clients, or do you just?
Yeah, we do. In fact, Isaac and I have been working on that pretty extensively lately, because while LinkedIn gives you all this, it's kind of cumbersome to work through and laborious, if you would, to walk a client through. So we're developing a dashboarding visualization that we can just very easily walk people through the highlights of what we're producing for them on the client side. So this is all great, but if you can get it into some better visuals, LinkedIn does kind of a terrible job at visuals, honestly. And what we've found with clients is that it's really difficult for them to interpret this data. You really have
It's hard for me to interpret this
for
data.
Exactly. So if you can put some dashboard visualization to it, you'll be way ahead.
And is the data that you see relative to the followers that you have? So in other words, a page that only has 100 followers, so they still get the same insights, or is it over 1,000 now you get, the grander view?
LinkedIn will tell you that over 800 is their kind of magical sweet spot where you can increase views. But I can tell you, I've gotten 15,000, 20,000 views on a post with a company that has only 250 followers.
That's crazy.
Because you're freaking awesome.
So with the company page, side of things, I just think it's important to remember that, I guess with paid ads as well, but impressions, they matter. There is a place for them, and there is a value from impression for brand awareness. And also, it all has to eventually produce sales, leads and sales. So if you're getting a ton of exposure from the right audience at scale, it should, right? It's, unless you're not doing any kind of ask, it should produce lead conversions. Okay, we've got like 4 minutes left. Let's talk about direct outreach. So you've got, this is really simplified, and there are things that you can do to increase like your acceptance rate and your reply rate, but just going kind of busting through. You send someone an invite, they have to accept. You need to have a conversation. They actually need to reply. And then when they've replied, they need to be qualified. And then if they're qualified and ready to buy now, then there's a lead conversion. And that's usually going to be off of LinkedIn, like case, like send me an email with more info, let's do a call or whatever it might be. Lead conversion conversation happens off LinkedIn. That's a kind of short, condensed version if you're doing direct outreach and assuming that you're doing a good job on all those things. So we want to measure your acceptance rates, right? This one's a little bit more linear and this is much easier than looking at all the different moving pieces going on here. This is so much easier.
Really easy steps here.
Yeah. So you've got to have good acceptance rates. You've got to have good reply rates, and you've got to be able to communicate your offer to a qualified audience. So I'd love to hear everyone. What do you feel like is a good acceptance rates? Now, I'm not talking about somebody just commented on your post and right then and there you send them an invite, because your acceptance rate is going to be so high. But if you just have a list of people that look like they're involved in making decisions at a brand you want to sell to, and you're going through and starting a business relationship with them, apart from like an activity trigger, what do you guys find as a good acceptance rate in that process?
Are you talking about 2s and 3s and posted in 30 days and not posted in 30 days? The whole caboodle, right?
Yep, the whole caboodle and the kit,
30%.
the kit and caboodle.
I use 30% as a baseline.
30% is baseline.
30.
30% would be high in my world, very high.
It kind of does. It kind of there are definitely some variables that can matter. You know, like audience size and how active the users are and stuff. So Judy says 30. Mike says what, 20 to 30?
20.
20. Anybody else have any recorded KPIs where you could drop for people that watch this later to aim for?
In fact, I'll say 15 to 20, not even 20. With an audience where you got people that have pictures and don't have pictures, 2s and 3s. You didn't do a lot of scrubbing. You know, you're not scrubbing a list, a native search that hasn't been scrubbed. Yeah, I'd do 15 to 20 in my world, and I've got stats that I see.
Mm-hmm. We usually
what increases it is who you throw out. It's not always what you put in, but how much you throw out people that wouldn't connect. You know, throwing out students and interns and people that were part-time and supervisors and managers. And, you know, if I stack in 100 Boolean words of excluded titles, I can raise stuff up pretty good. But I don't think that's what you're really talking about, is the exceptional nature of how many.
Yeah. If you have 100% perfectly scrubbed list, what would the acceptance rate be? We usually see, and part of this comes down to who you are targeting. We usually see, and this has been consistent for the last many years, it's usually evens out to be in the mid 30%. If it's a national audience and the audience is really active on LinkedIn and it's like a peer-to-peer connection that's going to later turn into sales, we often see the acceptance rate like 50%. It's not exaggerating, but that's more of like the best case scenario. Yeah. Once you work through a list, like if you're starting with a list that has 10, 20,000 people, the very front of the list, if you're like relying on search to create your list, the front of the list is going to be a higher acceptance rate. You get to, you know, 500 in, 1,000 in, 2,000 in, it's going to be lower because now you're getting to people that aren't on the platform as often. And we usually see it taper down to in the mid 30s, 30, so say 33%. That's what we tend to see. But again, that's just a kind of guiding value. So if you're watching this in the future, if you're just getting started, aim for, you know, 25 to 35%, like have that as your goal. And you're going to have bigger wins if the people are on LinkedIn, if they're engaging with your material, if, you know, if there are activity triggers that tell you that they're on the platform now, they're more likely to accept. You're going to have much higher, but sometimes that can be more time consuming too.
It's the people that don't log into LinkedIn at all in those 30 days that drag your statistics down.
It's absolutely true.
If you're going for audiences where they log in at once a quarter or so, you know, owners of companies in healthcare, they don't log into LinkedIn that often. So if you start at 100, now what's your connect rate of the people that did log in? That's a different deal. And people that are put into there that didn't even have a chance to see it because LinkedIn's not on their monthly login.
That's 100% true, Mike. Absolutely. What about reply rate? So let's say that you've got a about 30, let's say 30% acceptance rate. And part of this depends on what you say in your message, right? And what their response is. Does anybody have any measured reply rates that you want to share?
From what I've been tracking, it's been around 15%, but it's over a bunch of verticals. And it's different triggers. So I'm going to say average, we've been seeing about 15%.
So 15% of new connections reply.
Now, it's interesting because some of them are just doing the AI reply, right?
Yeah.
So I'm talking about actually replying like a real reply.
Yep.
Thumbs up, thanks for asking, you know, that kind of stuff. A bubble at the bottom. Is that what you mean?
That's the AI response.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have any recorded numbers to share? Anybody? Well,
I would back Judy's statistics for us, you know, as well. I mean, I'm in that sort of range too. 15 to 20% responding. Now, if the people responding, it's, you know, it could even be a little higher sometimes because they logged in. Right? They had to log in to accept your connection request. So they're in a different bucket of people than the folks who we don't know about that with. So it's a good point.
I think the biggest problem with the reply rate is LinkedIn itself. The message window is so blasted poor. You know, you can click on the message, read it, it unchecks it, it turns it to green, and then it's so easy to forget it because it's just a long list of things. So if you open it and you don't have time to respond to it, forget it. I mean, for most of these people that you're trying to respond to, they'll forget it if they don't see a little green dot is unread. And it's like email, right? You just open an email and it's gone. So
that's been my biggest gripe on LinkedIn. They're doing all this other shiny
object. Totally, I agree.
Yeah.
Well, this sounds more like open rate. A reply is a reply.
Yeah.
And so
no, but what I'm saying there is when they open it, they read it, they don't have time to reply to it right then. But then they don't ever get back. It's really not an issue of whether or not they would reply to it. It just gets lost in their message feed, if you would.
Yep. Mm-hmm. And unless you really know where to click, you've got this small little window to scroll shit through. Through here. Yeah. You hit the arrow down here and the arrow up here, you can get a bigger window open and stuff, but almost no one knows to do that. So they see part of your message, and hopefully that's the part that they like.
But I would say,
in my opinion, the better percentage to look at would be who replies to your second message.
Okay.
So get more replies on the second message.
The second message, so the invite message is excluded, and then after connecting, you've sent 2 messages. So there are 3 instances in the inbox.
After connecting, you've sent your next message of thanks for connecting and whatever.
Absolutely, yeah. Rarely people reply to the accept message because it's of the, I think that's user interface. So if we're going to go through a sequence of messages, we're going to be kind of like with the corporate page, we're going to want to start a dialogue. So I want that message one, I want it to be short, to feel like it came from a phone, and to get them talking. So that's a big emphasis, because once people start talking, they're talking. It's like, I want them to invest in the conversation and then draw the information out. So we actually see reply rates closer to 40%. But we're also being very, like, our main push is to ask a short question that requires minimal effort to respond, but it's related to work. It's related to what they do at their job. So
I think I see you have the qualified square right underneath there. We do the qualifying after they accept. So after they accept, that's where we qualify them there and decide if we're going to send a welcome message, if they are qualified, or just let them go, keep the connection, say nothing, and bury it. We do the qualifying step in between accept and message up there.
So I think that vernacular wise, Mike, I think that what you just described, I would more refer to as confirmed that they're your target audience. Qualified means you have had a conversation and from them that they're in the decision-making position at their company internally for sure, and that they do purchase
different kind of qualifying. I get
totally.
that.
And what you said is true, that you should do that. I just think that's more related to targeting than qualifying. I don't know that you can get qualified without some kind of dialogue. Yeah.
So one thing that is really helping is sending the welcome message with a video. So we're sending a video in that stage. They accept video. And the video leads them to say, oh, wow, that's a really cool way of saying hi. Or they just book a call directly.
Is the video rendered in the message, or do they have to click on a link with the video?
They have a GIF.
What tool are you using for that, Andres?
Video we're sending to them.
What tool are you using? Loom?
Dub.
What is it? Dub?
I can send you a link for that.
Okay, yeah, that'd be great. That's interesting.
Does anybody have any numbers on conversion rates? And actually, maybe we can split this into the type of conversion. So like top mid funnel conversion percentages, and then bottom of funnel conversion percentages. Anybody have any data there?
Interesting that I've seen it happen where they agree to the call. You schedule the call, and for some reason it doesn't happen. So then they got to go back and react.
Hi, this is Mike.
Hi, Mike.
Hi, Mike.
Hi,
Mike. So what we've measured over the years is about 5% of your network is at the just because of life circumstances. About 5% their company is looking at buying now. And so we usually get about 5% of people are saying yes to some kind of bottom of funnel call to action. If you can give a call to action that's more top mid funnel, where they're qualified, but you can take the conversation off LinkedIn to do product comparison or some kind of like review for later, it's way higher. It's going to be more like 15 to 20%. So we made that pivot a few years ago, and I realized, oh my gosh, I'm leaving so many potential conversions on the table. Like, why only do book a meeting when, if they're genuinely not ready to buy right now, it's a waste of everybody's time. Let's do a mid funnel here, check out our portfolio for later. And then you put them in your CRM and the deal pipeline, and then just have your client follow up appropriately. Right. So you can still do stuff on LinkedIn, but when we're able to give a top mid funnel conversion, we see more like 15 to 20% is our average conversion rates there. And then of those, probably only 5% are bottom of funnel, but they're all going into the pipeline, the CRM deal pipeline. So anybody else have any definitive lead conversion stats there you want to share?
It's across the board, because for me, it depends on the industries. I mean, I've seen like in the CPA industry, accounting industry, it's been lower. I've seen in commercial real estate, it's higher. You know, so I think it depends. And I have a legal lawyer client, very high conversion. You know, so I haven't come up with like a, you know,
Yeah.
as concise as the 30% accept rate is I can say average, but on the lead conversion. And then it's the drop leads that you got to go back and reactivate that are really, that's where the gold is.
Yeah.
You can go back and remind people.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. Has anybody measured, just in this, since we're way past the hour, sorry everyone, if you can leave if you want to, it's totally cool, won't hurt my feelings. The LinkedIn event, there are obviously a few ways that you can invite someone to a LinkedIn event. You can do it by sending the actual event invite, or you can send them a message, tell them about the invite and drop the link in there. Just for the sake of time, if you can send out 1,000 invites, does anybody have any stats that you've measured on how many people tend to click yes attending using the lead form submissions on the events? No
Don't have
stats.
stats. I
Okay.
mean, we did get almost 300 people signed up, and literally, thank you for reminding me to do that. What did we do that like 10 days before the event? It was like right before the event. You're like, Mary, invite the speakers, you know? So I don't know how many speakers sat and invited people, but we did have, I want to say that using the LinkedIn event really helped increase the attendees for the event.
Yep. And there are a bunch of things that you can do to bring up submissions, but just strictly talking about sending the invite, you know, you say invite connections, type in their name. We've probably done in the last 2 months, I'm going to ballpark and say 12 events maybe, where we've invited about 1,000 people for each of those 12 events. And we've seen the acceptance rates be, so of the 1,000 invites, it seems like the earlier the better. But we've seen on the low end 50 and on the high end 150. So
how do you measure that? You're going, okay, I'm inviting 1,000 people. Are you the only one inviting people to that event?
In those instances, yes, we were the only ones inviting. Yeah. And
those
I don't
paid events or free events?
Most of them were free, but not all of them.
I just invited 8,000 people to an event for one client. I did 1,000 a week, 8,000 people, his whole network.
Mike, did you send, are you talking about,
these are all hemp people.
Are you said 8,000 people? Is this, you sent 8,000 like event invites, or you messaged 8,000 people about it?
Invite connections to this event from the host of the event. And here was my trick, because you got to scroll down and scroll down and scroll down and scroll down until you get to the bottom. Do it by state. I went state by state. So the bottom wasn't 8,000 down. The bottom was 500 down or 200 down or something. But I went state by state through all 50 states. I got a list of all the states, and I put states in, and I scrolled all the way to the bottom. Then I clicked the add all, but that was 8,000 to one event.
So you can send 8,000. I thought that you were capped at 1,000.
No, 1,000 a week.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Are you
I
sure?
thought it was just
Really?
at the.
Yeah,
I did not know that. That's big news.
Give it a try. You'll see. The next week you can do it again. I invited 950 one day, and the next week I invited 900 more.
That's really good to know. I did not know that. I thought it was 1,000 period. Wow.
Maybe I just stumbled upon it. It's the down arrow part that kills you. You got to keep going down and down and down and down and down till you get to the bottom. And that's why I did it by state, so the bottom wasn't as deep.
Probably resets on Sunday, then like everything else, if it's weekly. Maybe,
yeah, probably on Sundays. Yeah.
So then you could do a big thing on the end of the week, and then if you're crunched for time, end of week, beginning of week, you could do 2,000 in just a few days.
There's a few criteria to break it up by. Location is the one I use, but there's some other criteria you can use to whittle down who in your network gets it.
That's cool. That's cool, guy.
I didn't think I knew more. I was learning from y'all on that one. For Mary, I learned on that one.
That's
Thanks,
awesome.
Mike, because I'm actually talking about the event stuff tonight on 15 Minutes of Fame. So I just added your little trick. Thank you. Because it was a
So-
pain in the butt to go down and scroll and scroll and scroll every time.
You have to
So
solve
we've
this better.
seen between 5 and 10% of invites accepted. That's been our measured stuff there. But we've only done 1,000. So if anybody ends up doing this and you have some firm stats on that, let me know, because I would love to know. I'll say this too, when it seems like when events on company pages and the lead forms first came out, they performed like crazy good. And I think that they're just getting more saturated, to be expected, and it's gone down a little bit, but it's still totally worth the time. But not as blockbuster as the first month. And then definitely on this, I was just talking to a client about this. The title is like everything. The event title is everything with getting the acceptance rate. I mean, it's like you have to invite the right people, and assuming that you're inviting the right people, the title is everything, because they get the invite and it's from you and it has the title name. And if the title doesn't make them go, ooh, they're not going to do anything about it.
In my
So
instance here, it's the guy who runs the biggest hemp conferences and stuff in the country, and they're all hemp people in the industry. So all of our stats are kind of inflated because of the superior marketing, superior targeting.
Yeah, well, they're not. You're just doing a great job. That's the right audience with the right offer. That's marketing. That's sales. Good job. If I sign up, was there any? You guys giving out any like free packages, for hemp packages?
Samples?
Hemp's not going to do that much for you, buddy.
Hemples?
If that's
Okay.
what you're looking
Okay.
for. And I'm sure you know that.
All right. Well, let's wrap it up here. We're 15 past the hour. Appreciate everybody's time. Thank you for sharing your stats and numbers, and hopefully y'all learned a thing or two.
Another great call. Yep.
See you, everybody.
Bye, everyone. Have a great week.
Bye. Great to see you.
Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you.
Bye.